What is up? Wow. Welcome into this.
Yo, right before the game.
Put it together.
Sorry, we're talking about trades. We're excited.
Edition of Pushing the Pile brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We were also talking about Bronny James last night.
Yeah.
And if a father-son duo could ever play in the NFL. It hasn't yet.
Father-son duo are also are the rules lending itself to guys playing longer now? The way that people train in the offseason.
So. I mean, we saw for the first time 2 40-year-old tackles, Jason Peters, Andrew Whitworth, never happened before. We are seeing multiple over 40 quarterbacks in recent years. Brady, Rodgers.
100%.
When guys play into even late 30s. 15, 20 years ago was a rarity. So I don't think it's
you'd have to get started early. You'd have to get started with your business real early. I mean, imagine a 20-year NFL quarterback, a starter, really good player, one of these elite level quarterbacks. Now imagine he's got a son in college football that's coming up. And obviously, like LeBron James, you wait around, you stretch your career out as far as you can.
Right.
And you play well enough to be able to have the management capital to say, hey, we need this guy in our team. So, I just think of a cool situation. I see these guys on the bench right here. It's one of the coolest things in sports. And when we were all younger, it was Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr. in the same outfield together. And I remember Ken Griffey Jr. calling off his old man on a couple fly balls. It's one of the coolest things ever. And to see this is really cool. I don't know if LeBron's son is going to be anything special in the NBA, but he made it there. And it would be cool to have the NFL's version of that.
I don't think the NFL is as genetically driven as the NBA, but it still is, right? You see it across the NFL. Patrick Surtain Jr., Asante Samuel Jr., see Arch Manning coming up. That matters a ton. So I don't think it's off the table. I do think it's going to be very difficult and probably going to be limited to quarterback position.
Bruce Matthews played 19 years from 1983 to 2001. He never missed a game, dude. He was playing on the offensive line. This is stuff that can happen. It can happen. All right.
I mean, the way that Frank Gore stretched his career out, it almost happened.
Yeah.
Right? His son's, a rookie this year. Imagine Frank coming out of retirement. I just want to shoot up one game with my son.
He wants to play fullback for his son.
Exactly. That would be dope.
Out.
And the crazy thing is, his son plays for the Bills. Frank played for the Bills as well, too.
It's very cool. It's very cool. But, I mean, it just got me thinking a little bit about it.
I think it will. I think it might be a while. And I think it'll be, I think it'll probably be a quarterback.
It'll be a quarterback.
Most likely would be a quarterback for sure.
You got to have the quarterback and then draft his replacement as his son. It's some kind of
kicker, though.
Could be a kicker.
There you go. But kicker, I don't think is as genetically inclined. Just because you got a big leg, I'm not sure your son is gonna
got that big old hog of a leg.
Who was it? The punter for the Giants? Fields. I think his son played.
I could totally see it being a special teamer. But position players, with the way the rules are going, the way they're protecting the quarterbacks, probably going to end up being a quarterback.
All right. The big news, first off the ball segment.
Huge.
DeAndre Hopkins, traded to the Chiefs. If you've listened to this podcast in recent weeks, though, you'll know that DeAndre Hopkins has not been a podcast favorite in terms of his on-field performance. We've pretty much said he is an underneath possession receiver at this point. The big plays, the downfield ability, basically gone for the mid-30s wide receiver. But he can catch, at least. And he has some size.
Great.
So for the Kansas City Chiefs, it's a 5th-round pick that could become a 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous value. It's tremendous value. And I think you can't get caught up as a football fan and analyzing this trade as that's not the same DeAndre Hopkins. You have to think about it from the Chiefs' point of view.
Correct.
It's we are adding another guy to this arsenal that Patrick Mahomes can rely on. And you said it. He can catch. He can go underneath. He gives another option. And people were talking about how this Chiefs offense has been, the depth of target isn't very impressive. Well, it doesn't matter. This team can be whoever it wants to be. They can run the football effectively. The screen game is always a threat to the defense. And now you add a guy like Hopkins, and I think him and Mahomes will hit it off immediately. I mean, what receiver would not want to play with Patrick Mahomes?
Without a doubt, this is such a Kansas City Chiefs move. Remember, Kadarius Toney, even though it didn't work out there, it worked out for that one Super Bowl, right? And that's essentially why they're bringing DeAndre Hopkins in. You lose Rashee Rice for the rest of the year. Juju Smith-Schuster is dealing with a hamstring.
Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, Hollywood Brown. Their depth is minimal right now at the receiver position. I think Andy Reid's done a masterful job of, being inventive on offense by using more tight ends. But to your point, Mike, right, this isn't the same DeAndre Hopkins we're used to seeing it with the Texans or Arizona, but he can catch the ball. But I always find it interesting, and you can speak to this, Kyle, when guys get traded, how they get an influx of energy, right? Could we potentially see the guy that we saw the first year with the Tennessee Titans. That was a downfield threat that could go up and still make the contested catches because now he's playing for a contender, right? Amari Cooper, same thing. This was probably his worst start to his career this year with the Cleveland Browns. Touchdown catch Sunday versus Buffalo Bills. Like, it's always interesting.
He didn't even know where to go.
Exactly.
Told him where to go.
Exactly. It's always interesting that guys get an influx of energy once they know they're going to a team where they actually have a chance to win football games. So, there was a tweet that came out a few years ago where, DeAndre Hopkins tweeted like Patrick Mahomes is amazing, and now he gets to go play for him. So I can't wait to see how Andy Reid is going to use him again. Like, he's not going to be that guy that's going to be your true number one receiver anymore. But I do think because of his size and his ability to catch the ball, he could be somebody that you use in the red zone.
Yeah, I think you saw that with, like you mentioned, going to a new spot. All of a sudden, you're on a contender and kind of brings that juice back. I think it was Von Miller when he got traded to the Rams after the Broncos. He was kind of just like fine. People were like, oh, is Von on the decline? All of a sudden, that playoff stretch, he was not on the decline whatsoever. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to get his speed back, but I do think you'll see a little bit more locked in. And from the Chiefs' perspective, what they did with Rashee Rice, they don't have a guy in the roster that can do that in terms of, they were spreading teams out, getting him in the slot, matched up one-on-one, and just knew he could win that route. Xavier Worthy's not that guy. Travis Kelce at this point isn't that guy. I think DeAndre Hopkins, at least you can still trust him to win slant routes consistently and haul those in. And they just didn't have that at this point. That's why the offense looked the way the offense looked. So.
Yeah, you spark a fire. When you are in a situation that is essentially hopeless in Tennessee with their current situation, and you get an opportunity to go to a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. I think about my 8 years in Chicago, and we had some good teams, but I knew that we were never going to win a Super Bowl with that roster. I took a year off from football, thought I was done with it. I fell out of love with football at the end, and then you get an opportunity to go play for the Chiefs. And when you walk into that building,
I'm sure,
and when you're in the team meeting room and Andy Reid's at the front of the room and he's got to get Travis to shut up so he can get his meeting started, and the guys laugh, and it's like you can feel that it's a family. D-Hop's going to feel that. His love for the game, I'm sure, will be sparked, and this will be a catalyst for some really good performances from DeAndre Hopkins.
I want to go back to something that Mike said when he compared this kind of like to Von Miller, his last year in Denver, where he was playing decent football, but kind of took it to the next level when he went to the Rams. And to your point, right, when you go to a place, you get an influx of energy, especially when you know that roster has the ability to contend for a Super Bowl. We were actually having a candid conversation about other potential trades at the deadline. I know people were saying the Detroit Lions need to trade for Aiden Hutchinson. But I liken the Aiden Hutchinson situation to the Von Miller situation, right? To me, not the Max Crosby situation is what I'm saying. Max Crosby, to me, through and through, is a Raider. Like, Von Miller was through and through a Denver Bronco. But he was at the end, towards the end of his career, right? And that's where I could see maybe if Max doesn't get to the pinnacle, doesn't get a championship ring by like year 9, 10, or 11, where he maybe takes that Von Miller route. I just think it's too early in his career. And again, he's earned the right to potentially say, I want out of here, because he's literally laid it on the line for the Raiders since day one, right? But if you're the Raiders, this is literally the face of your franchise.
Yeah.
Like, what would that say going forward to guys that potentially want to come in there as free agent? And then the rest of the team, if you were to trade a guy like Max Crosby. So I know a lot of people were saying, throw whatever it takes, Detroit, to get Max Crosby. The thing about Aaron Glenn is he likes to send pressure anyway. Right now, again, Aiden Hutchinson was on a trajectory to be Defensive Player of the Year, and one player can't replace him. Now, Max Crosby could potentially do that, right? But I think by scheme, like, I think the Lions will be okay. One, because their offense is damn near unstoppable. But two, Aaron Glenn finally has the corners to play in the scheme that he wants to play in. To me right now, Brian Branch should be in first place for Defensive Player of the Year. He's playing out of his mind.
Fabulous. I think what you're saying, and I want to hammer this home because it's important. There's certain guys, it's like the scene of The Departed when Leo DiCaprio, he's drinking his cranberry juice, he gets made fun of, and then he hits a guy, and the guy says, I'm the guy who says who you can hit and who you can't hit. Well, there's certain guys that you can trade, and there's certain guys that you can't trade.
For sure.
They're fixers in their locker room. Myles Garrett in Cleveland
100%.
is one name that you and I were talking about. Max Crosby. These guys, that's a Brown and that's a Raider. And that's kind of holy ground that you don't touch there.
For sure.
But to your point about Von Miller, he played the entire career. He played one man's career for one team and then was able to get that pass like, it's okay, you can go home now.
For sure.
So Max Crosby isn't quite there yet. I mean, people would point fingers and say, but you said you were a Raider for life. Once he reaches that, 9-year mark, whatever it is, whatever we say the threshold is, then he gets that free pass. If he goes to a place like Detroit or Kansas City down the road and gives a chance to win a Super Bowl, then we can't really blame him because he did give his heart and his soul to the team.
100%.
Yeah, to put some numbers to it, Von Miller was 32 when he was traded to the Rams. Max Crosby's 27.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just like
Still young.
completely different. Everyone thinks it makes sense from the Lions' perspective, and yeah, it does. But from the Raiders' perspective,
Makes
you're like,
no sense
if I have any chance,
If the
of
Raiders
turning
want
this
to
around,
rebuild, you keep a guy like Max Crosby
he
and you can
is-
look up at that shining light and say, that's who you want to be like.
But it didn't say it's a brand name. This is a brand
Yes,
name right here.
yes.
Like, you don't trade away the faces of your franchise, right? Because that will set you back like 5 or 6 years.
Yes. All right, we're going to get to a little bit more trade talk as the deadline approaches right after this.
Get ready to raise your cup to Canadian football's biggest game of the year. There ain't no party like a Grey Cup party. November 17th on CBS Sports Network.
All right, NFL trade deadline approaching, a couple weeks away now. We're going to see a little bit more movement, I believe, between now and then as the arms race continues in both conferences. So my deep dive today, I wanted to discuss our favorite hypothetical trades. I'll just give a couple off the top that are my favorite. I think Deontay Johnson to the Chargers. We saw it this past weekend. Monday Night Football against the Arizona Cardinals. Justin Herbert is throwing to
Tight ends.
yes.
And still throwing it for 350
I was like, he's still
yards.
throwing off for 350 yards almost.
But he
Good
just
Lord.
doesn't have that explosive playmaker yet.
And when he does, he fumbles it out of the end zone.
yeah,
Jalen
unfortunately.
Reagor.
So
Ooh.
I think Deontay Johnson, he's in a last year of his deal in Carolina. And obviously you think they traded for him. They gave up a good amount. They want to keep him there. But as we've seen in Carolina, they also need draft picks. They also need more than just one wide receiver, and paying him a ton of money may not change their fortune. So if you can get a day 2 pick for a guy like Deontay Johnson, I think they'd pull the trigger. Now the Chargers, would they do it? Who knows? But I think the need there is very evident with what I've seen from them on tape.
I think that could work from both sides. I mean, to your point, you give a guy like Justin Herbert another weapon, and maybe he hits that 400 mark, and maybe you end up beating the Cardinals in prime time. If I got a guy like Justin Herbert, I want to maximize his potential, put pass catchers on the field that can do a multitude of things. Deontay Johnson can run a number of different types of routes. He's got the right body type and explosion to be able to help that offense.
I would just question how they would get it under the cap. Now, Carolina would probably have to pay most of his salary for this year. And would they be cool with that? If they're cool with that, they would probably want a higher draft pick. That's the only issue.
I wonder where that draft pick would be. It would probably be bottom of the second round, mid bottom of the second round.
But would you feel comfortable with the Chargers doing that? Especially for a guy that's
I'd have to see the
last year
numbers.
was
I'd have to see the numbers. I was listening to somebody talk about what the Vikings could be missing, and it was interesting to hear. Like a Dexter Lawrence type in the middle.
Yeah,
for the
I would love
Minnesota.
a Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want a Dexter Lawrence? The guy leads the league in sacks
But you
right
go
now.
and you watch the Detroit Lions tape and the things that they can do against anybody up front. And it's like, you have to have an answer for your closest enemy. And for the Minnesota Vikings, it's like, how can we bully the bullies? And you get a guy like Dexter Lawrence or another space heater in the middle. A guy on the Bears, Andrew Billings, is like a leverage monster that would be an awesome addition. But if I'm Chicago, I'm not letting Billings watch.
Yeah.
I think if I'm the Vikings, I would want interior offensive lineman would be somewhere where I'd be looking
for sure.
As
or
well.
Matt Stafford.
Yeah,
that's actually a real rumor that's going around too.
That's a real rumor this morning.
Flesh out how a Matt Stafford trade to the Minnesota Vikings.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know how it works either.
But that's what I've seen on Twitter this morning.
Okay,
It's funny that they play each other Thursday.
Yes.
Well, and people are saying Cooper Kupp to the Vikings as well as a possibility. Or Cooper Kupp
How
just
much
being
more
on the
weapons do
block.
you need?
I do
Good
think.
Lord.
I do think if I'm the Rams, Cooper Kupp is a real piece that I'm thinking about moving.
Yeah.
Because you see where you're at as a roster. He's 32 years old.
Yeah.
Same age as DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I don't think he's lost quite the step that D-Hop has. He never been his game. He's always been that underneath separator type of guy, plays with strength, wins with, savvy. But his contract is fairly large still.
That's the issue.
Whoever's going to take him on has to pay him a lot of money. If you're the Los Angeles Rams, I think you would be willing to get the draft pick back just for the resetting and the cap space back because of how unhealthy he's been at this point. Like I don't think you can rely on him. And I think if you're the Rams, you're really looking to reset this roster as best you can, as they've done, especially on the defense side of the ball. So going back to Matt Stafford here, his contract to trade him right now, the it's possible whoever was taking him on would take on somewhere in the neighborhood of $10+ million in cap space this season. And then cap hits of 49 million, 53 million the next 2 years. Oof. So it's a healthy amount to take on, but it's also Matt Stafford. For the Minnesota Vikings perspective, though, with just drafting JJ McCarthy, I don't think they would do it.
They only got one loss too this year.
But I mean, it's a fun one. I think the Cooper Kupp one is more interesting, to put some numbers to the Cooper Kupp deal and what it would look like. His cap hits the next 2 years, 29 million, 27 million. Now,
can he play quarterback?
Correct.
Now, again, the Rams could eat some of that in any trade, but I do also think they don't want to be paying him that much.
Correct.
So,
supposedly the Chiefs checked in on him because the cap number was so large. There was like, there's no way we can put this in our books.
See, and this is the part of the NFL that I don't really understand. Obviously, I think about like fit in terms of scheme, or if a guy's got enough youth or some juice left. Well, that makes sense. That trade makes sense from a positional standpoint. It's that numbers game that I have to get better at, because that's the biggest part of it, right? I mean,
yes,
compensation, finishing out these contracts.
Yeah.
And it's also why, from a trade perspective, you almost always see guys moved in the last year of their deal.
Yep.
Because that's when the cap numbers, you take the least hit as the team trading them away. But if you're dealing a guy, Cooper Kupp, 2 years left on his deal, Matt Stafford, a couple years left on his deal.
That's the heavy earnings portion.
You're eating the bonus as the team that trades him. The team that you're trading him to, they just have to pay his salaries. You eat the bonuses. Now you can structure it in a way that you can renegotiate these things.
It's like Denver's still paying Russell.
Yes, but unfortunately, I'm just
so
how
glad
it works.
That's not my job. Like the finance, it's like, holy shit, that has got to be that's a nightmare of a job.
So anyone looking at Cooper Kupp is just like, it's going to cost you.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So
and what are you actually getting? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Are you going to be able to get 8
how healthy
games left?
Correct.
The other guys that I think are interesting trade pieces, Hassan Reddick. Obviously, we know what's been going on.
They just came to terms.
He just got he just got his team issued gear like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Chase Young, I think, is the
Chase Young makes a lot of sense.
Chase Young's one of those guys where you put him in a new situation. You know, this is like me imagining my best version of Chase Young. And a Chase Young, if he goes to a place that has the opportunity to win, you could get some juice out of him.
Yeah, I actually like you having him go back to the 49ers because he played really well there in spurts last year. And they're a team that's been dealing with significant injuries. So they're going to have to really lean on their defense the next couple of weeks.
I do think if you're the New Orleans Saints, I'm starting to sell that.
Wholesale.
It's over.
But some of those contracts are so bad. It's just like,
that is the thing. They're also in one of those.
They keep kicking the can down the road.
That's
eventually
what you
they have to start over.
Kicking the can.
But with Chase Young, he was one of those guys they just signed on a 1 year deal that it's not going to cost them too much. So, yeah, those are my favorite hypotheticals. All right. Leger, what did you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I wanted to go into a deep dive. There was a controversial move, depending on who you ask, this past week with Mike Tomlin going to Russell Wilson after Justin Fields was the quarterback and they were 4-2. So want to talk to you guys about the way that Russell Wilson played. One, is it sustainable, and can he lead them to the playoffs? And first and foremost, I will say this. I didn't like the move when it first happened, right? Because you know this, Kyle, in the locker room, once the team is rallied around the guy, if you bring this guy in and it doesn't look good, you can lose some of the team, like quickly. But what I will say is this: I will never question Mike Tomlin ever again. Like, I don't know how many years it's been, guys, where we say, well, this is going to be the year Mike Tomlin has a losing record. Well, this is going to be the year. When you looked at the schedule in the beginning of the year, I said there is no way Mike Tomlin is going to 8-9 or even 9 or 8. I thought he was for sure 7 wins max. Right? Because when you looked at it, everybody assumed the AFC North was going to be the best division, with the NFC North being right behind it. Right now, the NFC North is clearly the best division in football. And the AFC North is probably one of the worst. I won't say one of the worst, but it's a middle of the pack division.
One of the biggest question marks.
Correct. Because of the Cleveland Browns, right? Cincinnati started off slow. They're starting to find their rhythm.
Their offense.
We knew Baltimore would get it turned around, but people were nervous after the first 2 weeks. And then you have the Steelers team that has just started hot, and you're like, where is this coming from? But getting back to Russell Wilson, didn't have gaudy numbers. I think he completed 55% of his passes, but it was the ability to give your best playmaker on the outside a chance. That's what it comes down to. I know people will say, well, those were, a lot of those were ridiculous catches, which, again, George Pickens is an alien. He's been known to make alien-type catches, right? When Justin Fields was in the game, he wasn't getting those opportunities because those balls were underthrown. Right? So from Mike Tomlin's perspective, He saw what was going on in film. He saw what was going on the practice field. And he said, I think we have a chance to get a little bit better at this position. And that's why, to me, he's one of the GOATs.
Yeah.
Right? Because he had a conversation, I think it was on the pivot. He was like, I run to coaching. Like so many coaches run away from coaching.
Yes.
I run to coaching. And that was 100% running to coaching because that was a big move that literally could have derailed the entire season.
It's a coaching decision that affected the performance of your team.
100%, not only physically, but mentally as well. Because if Russell continued to play like he did in the first quarter, oh my God. Like, you know what? He would have got shredded. Like Mike Tomlin would have got shredded.
They were already booing him. They were already booing him.
The first quarter, some of those throws, he dirtied like 4 throws in a row. And I was like, God, this is not going to be good for Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
This is not going to be good for Mike Tomlin. But then they started throwing the ball down the field. Again, Freiermuth with a heck of a one-handed catch. You got George Pickens with a one-handed catch. Sometimes at quarterback, your job is literally to give your player an opportunity. That's first and foremost what you do. Give your player an opportunity. Give him the right to go make a play for you. And that's what Russell Wilson did. And I thought he was really good on some of those bootleg plays as well, where pressure was in his face, where Justin Fields had kind of struggled earlier in the year, getting the ball to the guy in the flat.
Yep.
He did a really good job getting it to Darnell Washington, getting it to Freiermuth in the flat. So to me, I think it is sustainable as long as George Pickens continues to be the monster that he is on the outside. And what that did, guys, was in the first half, they couldn't run the ball a lick at all, right? But because now that George Pickens is making plays on the outside, that safety has to stay back. Najee Harris at 6'1", 250 pounds, he comes into play, and that's what happened. So I feel like from that standpoint, it's sustainable. The Steelers always knew they weren't going to blow people out. Now they blew the Jets out. But this is a gritty team that's going to have to win gritty games just like that. And the ability to be able to throw the ball down the field, even if it isn't the prettiest ball, but just giving your guy an opportunity opens up the playbook more, which will open up the run game. So I think for the Steelers, it is sustainable. And history shows you Mike Tomlin is going to outcoach some teams down the line.
Yep, he'll steal a few.
Yeah.
And to your point, I mean, you got to get your stars involved. For so long, I talked about the most talented guy on the team, not last name Watt, is George Pickens. And you put the tape on in the first few weeks, and there's clear frustration. There's a clear disconnect between Justin Fields' ability to drive the ball down the field with some touch.
Got to put some touch on it.
And George Pickens being involved. And we saw him frustrated. And obviously from the outside looking in, you and I both have said it publicly. I didn't agree with Mike Tomlin's decision to take Justin Fields out with a team that's 4-2, coming off a win by multiple possessions. But you can't argue. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You put Russell Wilson in the game. And yes, it's his first time on an NFL field in live action since I can't tell you when.
Be some rust.
He's coming off a calf. We had questions about his mobility. People have questions about his authenticity, the ability to get into a new locker room and have a real relationship with the guys in your locker room. And people have said before, Justin Fields is one of the realest cats that they've been around. They love him. They respect him. You know, he's a soldier. Well, Russell Wilson is all the things that's like opposite of that. He's doing high knees on the airplane. I give him a tremendous amount of credit, though. He went out there. You could see it from his pregame interview. The guy was as locked in as you'll see a player. Yeah. And to go out there and have the first quarter and those first 3 possessions that he did, watching the people in the face paint booing him at Heinz Field in prime time, it was rough, but he found a way to battle. And then to your point, he gives his star players chances to make plays. Now you got George Pickens involved. Your offense gets doubly better, and you can see at the end of the game on the sideline with Najee Harris and George Pickens
having a great time,
draped all over Russell Wilson. It makes me feel good for a guy like Russell Wilson. Also, I feel bad for Fields, who's got the front row seat watching this whole thing.
I'll say this. Denver gave up a lot for him, right? And then they paired him with Nathaniel Hackett. And knowing what we know now about Nathaniel Hackett, a lot of people said it was rust, right? And that he was at fault there. And then they paired him with Sean Payton, and it got better. Numbers were better, but it's like Sean Payton's offense is not what Russell Wilson's.
Yeah, he doesn't fit that offense.
Russell Wilson, and what I saw this past weekend with what Arthur Smith was doing, and why I said I thought he was the better fit early on, is because his offense harkens back to early days in Seattle, what Russell Wilson looked like rookie year, second year. I'm blanking on who their OC was back then, but
was it Shoddy?
Yes, it was. Yep. It was play action.
Great callback.
Deep shots. Like it was play action, attack down the football field, get him on the move and attack, and not force him to be a drop back pocket passer. That's just never been his strength. His strength has been that touch on that deep ball. One of the best 100%. Deep balls from day one.
The way Chris Collinsworth explained it was really good too. on
It's
the
a moon ball.
broadcast.
Yes, and
It comes down.
Yeah.
The way it comes down forces the defender to be even closer to
No
you,
question.
because if you're throwing these laser throws like Anthony Richardson loves to throw and Justin Fields likes to drive the football, former baseball guy, he's supposed to throw it hard.
Yeah.
You don't have the ability to throw it. You can't layer the football. So these defenders have a hand there. Russell Wilson is putting it only where Pickens can catch it.
Well, and the fact that he wasn't even like accurate on some of these things, he still
Exactly.
completed, is almost a good thing for how the offense could fare going forward, because he will be more accurate on the other
sure.
forward as he plays more football, gets more rapport with these guys. Those balls will be in stride more often than not. That's just that's never been a question with Russell Wilson. So I do think, yes, this is sustainable. Now, again, the offensive line's tough. Your running game won't get going every week, and the offense will take a step back
Correct.
to earth. But I do think Russell Wilson is the better quarterback for this offense at this point in time. I thought Fields was playing great, but I do think just with the offense, how it's schemed up right now, and with George Pickens and like who your number one
Plays
is,
to your strengths.
it's going to play to your strengths much more.
I'm going to bang the gavel on that one because it's official. I think we all like Russell Wilson in this one.
And there's no way you can go back to Fields right now.
Russell Wilson.
Well, I do think, to your point of sometimes you lose the locker room making a move like this when the guy's playing fine.
Yeah.
So you want, I think it comes back down to messaging. You lose the locker room if you're saying something that the team doesn't see with their eyes, right?
Correct.
If you're saying Russ gives us a better chance to win and he goes out there and plays like shit, it's like
That's it.
then
That's
you
why it
don't
could've
and you
been
don't
tough.
and you don't make a move back then
Yeah.
to Fields. It's like, okay,
You lose
that's when you
credibility.
lose credibility.
Correct.
When you're like, no, Russ played fine. It's like, okay, everyone else could see that's not the case. But when you say we're making this move because we could be better,
Yeah.
and then the guy plays better, the offense plays better, it's like, okay, then the team believes it very easily. So
Case in point, in the post-game press conference, I think Brandon Marshall asked him, this is probably one of the biggest moves you made as a coach going to 3. And he kind of kids and goes, that's why they paid me the big bucks. I mean, is there a coach that has a better pulse on his team than Mike Tomlin ever in history?
He just
maybe?
feels like he feels like a guy that's in the drills with his
Correct.
team. Like, and here's the backdoor banter.
Great story for you. So Mike knows I go to the Senior Bowl every year. Mike Tomlin is the star of the Senior Bowl every single year.
Really?
Oh, it's like,
He's
bro,
in
he will
drills.
get in a drill and take over drills. So I remember when Will McDonald was there, he was like, yeah, Will, I've seen all your spin moves. And then the D-line goes to individual. He literally takes over the individual drill. I mean, he's just a player's guy. Like,
People
he's just
go
a
hands
guy.
off when Tomlin
Oh,
walks
yeah.
up.
Tomlin runs the Senior Bowl when he gets on the field.
He
man.
runs to coaching.
He runs to coaching. I like that. Yeah. That's just the type of guy he is, man.
All right, Kyle, what's your
My deep dive is I want to have a little conversation about the Comeback Player of the Year award and taking a look at it historically and how guys have earned it and won it. And I think it's been interesting because obviously last year Joe Flacco came off the couch and won the Comeback Player of the Year award. And a lot of people, myself included, thought a guy like DeMar Hamlin should win the award, and he didn't. DeMar Hamlin still doesn't have a Comeback Player of the Year award. My first question is, should there be an award that exceeds the Comeback Player of the Year award for a guy like DeMar Hamlin, who went through all he went through, and now he's back playing in the NFL? And who do you think is up for it this year? Who's the leader in the clubhouse?
But
for
even
the
with
2024 Comeback Player of the Year?
I think even with DeMar Hamlin, there's a conversation of, he overcame an insane amount, but he overcame an insane amount to be a backup in the NFL. It's like, I'm not saying like that's not worth nothing.
I mean,
but
it's not the guy doesn't not touch the field.
But I
The
thought
guy's
when,
on
I
the
thought
field
when
a lot.
Alex Smith won the award, I was like, he just played football again. It's like, it's like,
and he had to play against Aaron Donald, I think, in his first game.
right.
Yeah, that's tough.
That was, but it's like he didn't come back and play well.
So 2018,
it's what we should. I'm more saying the criterion should be
That's
consistent
the
across the
question
board.
mark right there. What is the
do-
criteria to win the award?
And they tried to this offseason give some clarity.
Yeah.
But I don't think they did it. Like
They
I don't
really
think they
didn't.
made it.
we're still talking about it.
Because they said this. They said the spirit of the AP Comeback Player of the Year award is to honor a player who has demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity by overcoming illness, physical injury, or other circumstances that led
it's a
him
physical
to
thing.
miss
Yes,
playing
other
time in the preseason.
circumstances like
Why
Ryan
did they add other
Tannehill
circumstances?
playing in Miami for all those years and then going to Tennessee and leading the NFL with 117.9 passer rating,
Even
2
Baker
playoff
Mayfield going
wins.
through what he went through.
Joe
Could've
Burrow
potentially won it.
overcame a serious knee injury in 2021. He took his team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
2022, Geno Smith, obviously, that was the I didn't call back year.
But he came back from being on the
Not
bench.
playing.
Came back from getting punched in the face his rookie year, actually.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Is that a good callback?
I was in the locker room.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you about it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to ask him about it. What happened with Geno Smith?
I mean, everybody's heard the story.
Not in a long time.
I will say this. Geno has grown a lot.
Yes.
I will say this, knowing him personally. He lives in the South Florida area with down here with actually all of us now.
With us.
In South Florida, yeah. He's grown significantly. He's not the same guy or kid because he was technically a kid when that happened. Yeah. But going into this award, right, I liken it to basketball because we always like the cross-pollination. We were just talking about Bronny and his dad playing. The NBA has a most improved player award. And again, right, you have to keep this into perspective. I don't want to throw too many awards out there because it kind of minimizes what guys have done and won awards, right? But I think there should be a clear separation from comeback player of the year. Like if case in point to what you read and how they've tried to structure the award. It's somebody that's coming back from illness, a significant injury, some type of adversity, right? And adversity depends. That's where I think the gray area is because adversity could be like Geno, like
Sam Darnold playing for the Panthers and the Jets. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. So adversity I think they should need to take that adversity word out of there and make it just a health thing, right? Sickness, injury, or something like that. And that's why I think most improved player would make a lot of sense. The NBA, Tyrese Maxey won that last year, right? And would he have been great for comeback player of the year? No, because he wasn't hurt the year before, right? He took his game to the next level. So, like, I think there needs to be a clear separation between most improved player, right, and comeback player. Because that way, a guy like Geno wins that award. A guy like Baker Mayfield wins that award. A guy like Sam Darnold wins that award. And then
unless player, Matt Stafford gets traded today.
Yeah, comeback player could go to a guy like Joe Burrow who's coming off an injury, or if Aaron Rodgers turns this thing around, right? Or even Cam Akers if he, ends up having a good year this year. That's why I think the clear separation, I think the NBA does a great job. I think the NFL should lean on it. Now, I will say the writers do have an award that they give out to most improved each year. I think Baker Mayfield won it last year, but it's not an official NFL award.
Like at the NFL honors.
Correct.
Like, so they do the coach of the year. They do the MVP. They do the
rookie of the year.
That is the night where they should give Sam Darnold his
most improved.
Or Mike called it a breakout player award. Yeah. Like Ryan Tannehill in 2019.
Again, that can be gray area too, because what's considered breakout? What if I was gonna say, what if like a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown who went over 1,000 but then goes for 1,800 the next year? Yeah. That's a breakout. You know what I'm saying?
So
that's why I said most improved. I think
there's a lot to cover there, but I thought it was worth a deep dive. And I still think DeMar Hamlin standing out in the fucking rain on this thing. I mean, you got to give him some hardware for this.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he didn't win that award.
Because
we don't want to take it away from Joe Flacco.
If Alex Smith can win it for
like 3 games or something
then I think DeMar Hamlin had a little more extenuating circumstances than a broken leg.
We watched DeMar Hamlin die on a football field, and now he's back and he's in the NFL and he's playing for a team that's going to be making a run. Last year, he did a fake punt in the playoffs. I mean,
it would be actually hilarious if they just gave it to him this year. They're like, hey, sorry, we kind of effed this up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was on, because he also was on back order.
Because by the letter of the law, he still didn't play last year, so he could get it because he's playing
his comeback.
That's right, because he was inactive a lot last year.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick dive because I know we got to get to the mailbag. Who do you think is the front runner technically this year? Probably Joe Burrow again, right?
Joe Burrow. If Nick Chubb has a couple good weeks.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. That's a really good one.
He has a couple
Joe Burrow's
going to
be like a 4-time comeback,
which is crazy
because he keeps getting
the second highest player in the league.
It's like they kept
comeback player of the year twice.
They kept voting me for the Ed Block.
If Aaron Rodgers turns it around,
because I had IR every year. They were like, just give it to Kyle again. Coaches are like, no, I'm over somebody else. He's just hurt. He's not courageous. He's just injury prone.
Oh man,
that's crazy.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break after this. We're gonna get to you guys' mailbag questions.
Boise State battles for the top of the Mountain West as they enter Rebel territory on CBS Sports Network.
All right, your mailbag questions. We're going to kick it off with a 5-star review mailbag question. As always, if you guys leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question, we will for sure answer it on the Wednesday show. This one comes from Matt Mick C87. He says, my question is about TJ Watt and JJ Watt. I know that at his peak, JJ is probably a top 2 to 3 defensive lineman of all time. But how close are we to acknowledging that TJ might end up with the better overall career? TJ has a DPOY, has won the sack title in 3 separate seasons, and tied Strahan's record in less than 16 full games played. Since Big Ben's elbow exploded in 2019, we only win when TJ literally gifts us our offense the ball in enemy territory. TJ leads the league in forced fumbles by a mile since coming to the NFL and is only 24 away from the all-time record, which isn't that far-fetched when he gets 5-7 a season. Obviously, JJ has 3 DPOYs, but I would argue TJ should have at least one more. But I think JJ winning 3 has actually hurt him because of voter fatigue. What do you guys say when we look back? Who will be the better Watt?
Man, this is an amazing mailbag question. What was his name again, Mike?
Matt Mix C87.
Matt,
shout out to Matt.
Amazing question, because even though we're about to discuss this, I wonder at like family dinners in the off season, is this discussed at the Watt table?
Yeah,
right? Because they do a lot of stuff together still.
I think JJ loves his brother so much and is so proud of him, and he's always my brother is better than me.
Yeah, but I mean,
I have an opinion on it though.
There was a span.
I have an opinion.
There was a span when JJ Watt was unblockable, and he was catching touchdowns on offense,
and he played every position on the defensive line. That's the only thing. I'm as an offensive lineman, to echo your sentiments, JJ Watt was the most hated man on the face of the earth when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. We hated him not only because he beat us. He was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we were the guys that got killed in the gun scenes every single week. It was the offensive line. And not only was he better than everybody, but he was in commercials, and he was, he's on TV, and he's built like an Adonis. TJ Watt is one of the best edge rushers to ever play the game. Correct. But I think if I'm going to be starting a football team and I have to pick one of these guys, I'm going to pick JJ because he plays all along the defensive front. Yeah. Literally can put his hand down over a guard, can line up at the 0 nose, can line up at the 9, can line up at the 5, anywhere. Now as a D lineman, talk about it.
Yeah, so when you talk about the versatility, I think that does give an edge to JJ. I actually talked about what he did on offense too. So now you even got a player you can put on offense in the red zone and throw fade balls to. And he comes down with the football because people forget he played tight end first in college and in high school before moving to the defensive side. The one thing about TJ Watt, though, I think he's the second fastest player to get to 100, only behind one of the GOATs in Reggie. White. So it's just like, that's rare air.
It's like,
right?
Pick your poison.
Yeah. So, but like, I think the defensive player of the year is obviously swaying JJ's favor, but to Matt's point, TJ probably should have 2 or 3 more.
There's a Myles Garrett last year.
Myles Garrett, that one, people were saying TJ could have potentially won that one. Tying Strahan's record, something that JJ never did. And I think one less game too, right? Because he was banged up. It's something that people aren't talking about.
It's unbelievable.
But I would have to give, because of what you said, the edge to me has to go to JJ just because of the versatility, not only on the defensive line, but again, what he did on offense as well. Like, now if TJ goes out there and lines up and tight end and catches a few touchdown passes,
which he
probably could do that. We can revisit this conversation. But I think what JJ did for like a 5-6 year span was utterly ridiculous. And then I think his last year, if I'm not mistaken, he had 13 or something like that.
He had 10 in Arizona last year.
He had double digit his last year.
Moonlighting as a football player.
It's so like, now, if TJ does that his last year, again, we can revisit this conversation. And he did it with the Arizona Cardinals. Like, again, not throwing any shade to them, but it's just like this dude, JJ Watt, was utterly ridiculous. And again, teams game plan for him, but it's hard to game plan for somebody that moves up and down the line of scrimmage. TJ Watt is lining up at right end or is it left end? No, left end.
He's over your right tackle.
Yes, right tackle. Left end. He's going to line up at left end majority of the time. Now, he does go to the other side a little bit, but he predominantly stays as the left end because Alex Highsmith is on the other side.
He could have been a better hockey player from what I've heard from people that knew JJ Watt when he was younger.
Freak athlete,
I've talked to people that have like literally, those people that are fans of sports, but they're not big football guys. They're hockey guys. Yeah. They're like, no, you guys stole him.
I heard he's a really good
You guys stole the next best player ever.
I heard he was a really
from
good
us.
Player. They say he still plays from time to time.
JJ's, he is a manimal. That's a great mailbag question. Thank you.
I'll say this. When I'm thinking of just who was, looking back on careers, who was like, ranking guys, it's about their peak, in my opinion. And no one's peak touched JJ Watt's peak over the past 20 years. Since Reggie White retired,
he was a god.
No one had a peak that touched his at the defensive end position. And his injury history, he had 5 separate surgeries on torn muscles, a torn elbow ligament, broken nose, broken hand, multiple back surgeries,
We
And
know
a
the
broken
broken
leg.
nose.
You know, is it
We know that.
gushing blood out there?
He's a camera 1, camera 2.
Yeah, he had about as bad an injury luck as you'll see from like a truly star player.
He was a
lot of times I
warrior.
feel like star players, I don't say don't get hurt, but like don't have that following him the way they did. And like,
Yeah, it was
when
like a 3-year span. It was
where
bad.
he
for
just
him.
couldn't see the field.
Yeah.
From 2016 through 2019, he missed 3 seasons in that span.
Well, the schedulers fucked up and put me against JJ week 1 in Houston. And I was like, well, this is the healthiest he's going to be all year.
This is the freshest he's going to be for sure.
Oh man. All right.
So like JJ Watt was so good that it would be the off season. And, you know, we obviously got the schedule. I knew we were going to play in Houston. And the only text I would get from my dad for like a 2-month, segment, he'd wake up at 6 a.m. to text me, what do you think he's doing right now?
I love that your dad did that.
Or it would be like 8 o'clock at night and he'd be like 99 ? Yeah.
I love that your dad did that.
That is
Getting you in that mentality.
That is
You
how
knew what it
powerful
was.
JJ Watt was.
You knew
That
what it
even
was
at,
week
year
1.
10, he's
Yeah.
like, are you getting ready? Because he is.
I love that. I love every bit of that.
All right, next mailbag question comes from Jake Liskow. He says, what does it feel like for an offense when you just don't get what you're expecting and the defense keeps metaphorically throwing paper when you're sure they're going to throw scissors this time, so you call rock? So basically, when they got your number, what does it feel like?
Well, when they have, if they have the right pressures dialed up or they've got the right matchup on the defensive line, sometimes you can't control what they're going to do in terms of how they're going to line up, but we have to just know the personnel. Like if we have the body types to be able to run good versus all plays, we're going to have to run good versus all plays and get out of these situations and force you to cover different parts of the field, force you to kind of get back into that base situation.
To me, essentially, he's talking about when Brian Flores has your number, right? We saw what he did to C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans for a half, what he did against Green Bay. Now, the one team for the last couple of years has had success against him is the Detroit Lions, right? And that's because they have the offensive line that can withstand
good versus
some of
all.
those pressure. Exactly, right? When you're looking at player for player, again, players win. Yeah, I love coaching, but players do win the game on the field, right? You got to have some guys, right, to win football games. So essentially, we kind of talked about this, I think like 3 weeks ago, having answers for pressure, right? You got to have answers to the test. You got to have enough bullets in the chamber to win games, right? You have to be able to counteract what the defense is doing. And that's why a lot of teams have struggled this year because they haven't had answers to pressure, which, again, after watching film, like how do you not know certain pressures are coming?
The answers to the tests are on the film.
There's tails there. Now, again, I would say what Vance Joseph has done, what Brian Flores has done, they've kind of taken it to the next level as far as sending simulated pressures, actually sending all-out pressures. And sometimes you think pressure's coming and it's actually not coming.
Comes from the other side.
Case in point, Aaron Rodgers got in London thinking that Van Ginkel was dropping, even though that one was a pretty simple one because it was on tape where when they double A mugged the linebackers, whoever the center turned to, that's the guy that was dropping out in coverage. So, like, again, you just got to know these things that are coming and have answers to the test. If you don't, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah,
for
something as simple as, like, to your point, double A mug, which we see a lot. 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers flanking the center. That's the double A mug. So mug is these guys up, double A gap. When you mic it verbally and you have to tell your other offensive linemen and tell your quarterbacks, the smart linebackers, the smart quarterbacks, they anticipate that because of how they're aligned, we're going to mic Van Ginkel. So obviously the smart guys are like, flip it.
Exactly.
Flip it. So you've seen the offenses now be like, who I point to is opposite of who we're going to.
That's a chess
Then you
match.
get into that chess match. Sometimes you have to go to the sideline and say, that's off. We're going back to call it. You know what I'm saying? That is the chess match.
Got to be able to think, man.
That you don't see unless you're on that line of scrimmage.
All right, next one comes from Harry Swartout. We know that name.
Harry.
Do head coaches get better at things like game management or team discipline? If your head coach makes bad challenges or the team takes sloppy penalties, is there any hope that gets cleaned up?
Andy Reid.
Experience. Yeah, I was going to say Andy Reid.
Famous.
My thing is Harry talking about somebody specifically? You know he's a
definitely
Dolphins
talking
fan.
about
Harry, I thought you were done with the Dolphins.
Tua's coming back this week potentially.
Yeah, and he's not wearing the Guardian cap.
I do think challenges, game management, experience wins out, but how long, right? How long do you give a guy before experience wins out? Because Andy Reid was like the most famous example, whether it's his time in Philly and even early on in the Chiefs, he was just like
Dilligaff.
awful at it.
Yeah.
There was a
About that
meme
stuff.
about it. And now,
Probably
obviously,
the best at it.
yes. So that's why they've won multiple Super Bowls. So, yeah, it can get better. It's like, how quickly does it get better?
Experience, man. It's
Experience
all about
helps.
it's all about experience, right? Like,
And your staff.
correct. You have to trust your staff.
Your
the people that are
willingness to
telling
listen
you
to
to throw the challenge. You have to have complete trust in them,
Yeah.
right? To Mike's point, like, experience is going to help you because there's certain scenarios you're not going to get probably until like year 7 or 8 of coaching, right? That, like, it's easy to fault somebody for making a decision if they've never seen it before. Now, again, if this is something they've seen before and they continue to make that decision, that's on the coach. That's, again, but the only way to learn is to go through certain scenarios that you won't see in practice, that you're only going to get in game day. And it's about how you respond to those scenarios, right? Whether it's a bad challenge or whether the team is being sloppy. We had a rule or saying in the locker room, Kyle, was either coaching it or what?
Or you're cussing it.
You're allowing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're cussing it because you're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
Like, I
exactly.
think about
like that one.
like the Niners, prime example. Kyle Shanahan grew up around the game. You'd think that he's a guy that would be so in tune with rules, with time management, clock management. They get to that overtime coin toss. They elect to receive the kick. The guys on the Chiefs are like, they want the ball. They pan to the Niners sideline. Kyle Juszczyk is a fucking Ivy League guy, a 10-year veteran in the league, a guy that you would expect to know the rules. Goes, did you know that we have to kick it? That's what I'm talking about. Yep. Andy Reid knows it. Kyle Shanahan does it. That's the difference between some of these teams. You could have a team get you all the way to that moment in the game, but that one coaching decision tends to be the impetus.
All right, next question. This one comes from Brock on Twitter. Do you think Anthony Richardson can turn it around?
Ooh.
We went through this.
Yeah,
we went through this a little bit in
there.
terms of his accuracy. But I think the biggest thing, my takeaway from all of that was what looks different from year 1 to year 2 with him. Is there anything?
Essentially, this is year 1 for him.
Yeah, that's also true.
You got to look at that too.
But he had an off season where, he couldn't throw necessarily until what was like February, where he could actually throw, but he could work on
technique.
Yeah, you can work on footwork.
Non-explosive technique.
His footwork's not any better. That's the biggest thing, is that the things that you want to see improve and you're like, you should see year-on-year growth, you haven't. And I don't think there's things he's awesome at in his game, and that you can't coach. And obviously that athlete, the arm that he has, his ability to operate from tight quarters in the pocket, like, you can't coach some of these things that he does, how he avoids sacks at a really high level. Those are all things that are great starting points, and why it's going to be difficult to really give up on him at the quarterback position. But again, we haven't seen an improvement. And if you're in the NFL, I don't care what position you're at, you better be getting better on that rookie contract, or else it's just.
I could have the best pass set in the world. I can have the quickest jump off the line of scrimmage out of any offensive lineman. I could take the best angles to the second level linebacker. But if I don't use my hands,
doesn't matter.
You're screwed. When you play quarterback, you need to have accuracy with the football. You need to be able to layer the ball. Anthony Richardson has all the physical tools. He's one of the toughest guys out there week in, week out. But can he make the layups?
Is this a scenario? Because the crazy thing is, they're only one game back in the AFC South right now, even though they haven't really played well on offense. I know I talked to Logan Ryan about this. He thinks they should go back to Flacco.
Same.
What do you guys think?
Same.
I go back and forth.
You take a guy that high in the draft, like,
because that
don't look
they
back.
Are obviously better with Flacco. I don't even think that's a debate at this point. But also, Richardson has not played football. That was the bed they made when they drafted him 4 overall. This was a guy who played 1 year in a run-heavy offense at Florida. So he hadn't played a ton. And everyone says you need to play, and I do think you need to play, but I also think you can develop on the bench, especially when you get the messaging from your head coach. I mean, similar to what we were saying about Tomlin, that, hey, this isn't good enough. We want to make the playoffs this year. You're not good enough. It's not giving up on him, but saying if push comes to shove, and we looked at their schedule on yesterday's show and just how tough it is, to reiterate, it's the Texans, the Vikings, the Bills, the Jets, the Lions over the next 5 games.
I think that's why I had them finishing 4th in the division, because of the schedule.
So if the next 2 weeks against the Texans defense and the Vikings defense, he looks lost, still missing throws, they put up 10 points.
Defenses too.
I think there's a world where, they say, hey,
Joe Flacco could win comeback player of the year twice.
Oh my God. The criteria, what is it?
But again, I'll just say this. It's going to be very difficult to quit Richardson because of how talented he is. Exactly. And I think they're going to give him, even if they do bench him this year, he'll be their starter next year. All right. Next question comes from Shaheen Rahman. How could the Packers unlock Christian Watson? In other words, does he have more upside as a boundary receiver?
Have at it, Mike.
Dude, I've not been a fan of him since they drafted him in terms of just
I love them coming out of North Dakota State
because of one. It's because he's a mismatched talent. He has insane ability to separate down the football field. He is explosive as can be, has this long, wiry frame, but he tracks the ball so poorly. We talked about George Pickens and how he's going to fight for everything at the catch point. He'll get to the football before others down the football field. That's just Christian Watson has never been him. You saw it even, gosh, what was it? You just see it multiple times over the course of, I've seen a handful of times over the course of the season, balls where he could be fighting for even just a pass interference, and he doesn't. That's what I worry about with him, is that you have this vertical threat who is not going to compete at the catch point well enough to consistently target, because on vertical balls.
Is it tracking or fighting for the ball?
It's kind of both. When you don't track the ball well, you don't know where to fight to, right?
We know some receivers are great. They turn into great DBs on those throws.
Yeah.
And then some are just like, meh.
Yeah, that's kind of Christian Watson, unfortunately. And so not even if you have separation on, say, a post, say you got 2 yards separation, it's still difficult to put a guy in stride.
Correct.
You're going to need to adjust to off-target balls and come back to footballs, fight through DB's hands, make plays at the catch point. And with Watson, I just think you've seen it enough from him. And I don't think it was a coincidence that when he was out last year, second half of that season, that's when they kind of went on their run. It was because a lot of his targets just turn out less than what they should. And so he's a freakish talent, don't get me wrong. But until that turns around, until I see any sort of change in that, and I have it this year.
So I'm blinded by the big explosion.
I don't think he's an
explosive athlete, man. I think another issue is, Mike, he just got so many young guys.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at it, Romeo Dobbs had a little spat where they had to kind of sit him down for a week, because last year he essentially was their one, and now Jaden Reed and now Tavius Wicks are starting to come alive, and he wasn't liked how he was getting used, and then comes back and has touchdown catches in 2 straight games, right? So it's just like they have so much talent. And then you still have Bo Milton there too, right? There's another guy. Not so bad. It's just like they literally go 4 or 5 deep with young talent. So I think that's part of the issue. It's hard to really unlock, quote unquote, one guy when Jordan Reed has a bevy of receivers he can, disperse the ball to.
Yeah, I just think Watson's going to be a one-trick deep guy that, 2 tight end sets, you get him out there, you hit on a play action shot every few games, and it's like, that's nice to have in an offense. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be what people want him to be when you see his combine numbers, when you see the size. I just don't think from a skill perspective that he's close to that, unfortunately. All right. And then another Packers question here about Jordan Love and his turnovers from 3 and out. He says, are you worried about Jordan Love's turnovers? He has a lower turnover-worthy play rate than Josh Allen. Shout out PFF. I personally think TD to interception ratio is a little overrated. I would rather have a QB who is 15-8 than a QB who is 6-2. Love can move the ball even if he takes risks. Yeah, we've said this. He's more Favre than Rodgers. And with this receiving core, I think I like that because he's going to take chances.
You have to.
The one thing that he just has to stop is those back foot moon ball prayers. Like,
he's seen Rodgers do it for so many times. He's like, I can do it too.
Yeah. It's just, whether it was the Vikings game, and I went back to the throw to Wicks this past week against the Texans that was on the play before, the second to last play of the game offensively for them, where he way overthrew Wicks off his back foot. And it's just kind of, he needs to stop that. And it was the 49ers game to end their season last year. The pick he threw, it's just like, the crazy chances need to be removed from his game. You take those out, the kind of like he's pressing, he's down, comeback situations, you take those away and you have an elite quarterback in the NFL. But just those plays seem to mar too many of their games still that, I'm a little worried. And that'll come with experience. I think he'll get rid of those in time. But at this very moment, that's probably the one part of his game where I'm like, you just got to stop.
I liken this a lot to like Babe Ruth, who hit a ton of home runs, but he struck out a lot because he took chances.
I said Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth knew that if he took big hacks, he could end up with big production. But the thing you have to be careful of is not chasing. And to your point, it's like take your chances, but don't take those chances where there is no chance.
Correct.
You give your chance next play or next series. It's okay to punt, as our guy Prisco says. It just makes me think about a home run hitter. You don't want to ever take the bat out of a home run hitter's hand.
That's true.
At the end of the day, that's why your offense looks the way it does in Green Bay, is because this quarterback has the ability to hit the home run. They do have the receivers to be able to get there, but don't chase. When you chase, you end up ending the game in San Francisco where you should have won.
All right, a few more questions. Big Sully T on Twitter says, is a hot dog a sandwich? By Webster Dictionary definition, it is, but would love to hear a discussion.
It's not a sandwich. It's a hot dog.
It's 100%. It's a hot dog. It's not a sandwich.
Sandwich is 2 pieces of bread. Hot dog is 1 split bread.
Yeah.
I would also argue that a hoagie. I would also argue that a hoagie is just 1 split piece of bread. It's not really a sandwich. It's a hoagie.
So, like, what about?
Now you're thinking.
Well, what about a cheesesteak sandwich? Is that not a?
That's a cheesesteak.
I think
That's technically a hoagie.
I think a hot dog sandwich. I think it's.
You ever said,
like
let's go get
sandwich-
some Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, or let's go get some cheesesteaks?
I say sandwiches.
Jeez.
I know.
So I think sandwich is like, if we're doing like a Venn diagram, sandwich is this big circle, right? And you have hoagie inside of it. You have, panini inside of it. And you have hot dog inside. It's like sandwich is
Hot dog's a sandwich.
Hot dog is a piece of bread, something in between.
It's
right?
2 pieces of bread.
I don't think it necessarily has to be
Sandwiched together.
Okay.
So is a calzone a sandwich then?
I was going to ask. Well, so is a
calzone.
hamburger? Is a hamburger sandwich?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's got 2 buns.
That's true.
I think
It's a burger.
I was gonna say it's a
there's
burger.
There's like a multitude of Venn diagrams. It's like the damn Olympics logo out here. There's so many different circles.
This is a real good.
So
deep
if I had, how you get like a soup in a bread bowl?
Yeah.
If they cut the top off the bread bowl, does that all of a sudden make it a sandwich?
Hold on. Help me out here. So if
So you got the bottom bread bowl.
it's a wet sandwich.
So what?
So you're more inclined to call soup in a bread bowl a sandwich before.
You have now reinvented the wheel.
Man, that's a good question.
Is a wrap a sandwich? No, it's a wrap.
It's not bread though.
Yeah, it's a pita bread. It's a wrap.
Yeah, it depends.
It's a wrap.
All right.
That was
A
good.
bit conflicting, but I'd vote yes. All right, 2025
Is an
draft.
Oreo a sandwich?
Ooh, it's a dessert sandwich.
If it was
Yes, it's a sugar sandwich. You're done, son.
All right, Morgan McGuire asks, what are your current QB rankings for this year's draft?
Oh, I can't wait to hear this from Mike.
Is there any sleepers you think could jump into the top of the process when it's all said and done? Glad you asked. I have an article on CBS Sports
Oh, there
right
it is. Love the pup.
breaking down the quarterback class. I'll go
Is
5
Shador
I'll go
one?
5-1.
Shador's not one, is he?
Not one.
Okay, good.
5-1.
I can't wait to
5,
hear his one though.
Carson Beck, Georgia. 4, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. 3, Drew Aller, Penn State. 2, Shador Sanders, Colorado, and then 1, Cam Ward, Miami.
That's what I'm talking about, Mike. Let's go.
Cam Ward will be the number 1 overall pick.
I've been
I feel
saying it
very
for the
confident
longest.
saying that.
Like he makes the game look so easy. The only thing is he's so aggressive sometimes. He can get it up. Kind of how we were just talking about Jordan Love, right? Because he feels like he can make every throw, which he can make every throw. I think, and we saw it versus Louisville. He kind of took that out of his game. That's why I thought the bye was perfect for them, right? Because he could reset himself and realize, like, I'm already good enough. I don't need to make chancy throws when I don't need to. I thought that game versus Louisville was some of the best tape I've seen from a quarterback from that position. Love that you had Shador too.
Shador.
How
Which
tall
I
is Cam
agree.
Ward?
He's like
He's
6'2", 6'2", yeah.
And he's listed at 6'2". He's probably a little bit. He looks
Yeah, he's a little
shorter.
bit shorter than 6. I've seen him in person. He's like in between 6'1", 6'2". Big enough for sure.
Yes.
But I love the guy that you had at number 4 because he's my sleeper.
Nussmeier.
No question. Right now, and I think he should be a top 5 Heisman candidate. When you see what he's done at LSU, and nobody's talking about the Tigers because everybody's so used to talking about Bama and Georgia and now Texas. He's got that team in the thick of the SEC race and college football playoff race. What I really loved about him, Mike, was his resiliency in the Ole Miss game because he had some throws. I was like, what are you doing? But he had some of those throws at the end of the game. I was like, oh, my God.
There he goes.
There he is. And then Arkansas, not an easy place to play. He goes out there and boat races them last week. Really big game this week versus A&M. That's one of the top defenses in all the nation. I can't wait to see Nussmeier play this week.
They got to do that goofy-ass yell on College Station.
Nussmeier's dad, talking about bloodlines, he's a former NFL quarterback, now the quarterback coach for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Didn't know that.
This
didn't either.
season, 288 dropbacks, he's taken 1 sack, which is
He's a dog, man.
He just plays at a really high level now.
They want him in Philly.
Not elite tools or anything, but
Wow, David Hurts out of there.
Stop.
I will say this though about Cam Ward. He's just so physically, like if you just compare him to the rest of the class, he's more physically gifted than every other guy.
For sure.
Like he has a cannon for an arm. I think he put one, I can't remember who exactly it was. He put one almost 70 yards on tape, like just from the pocket, just easy.
He does look effortless every time I watch
it. It looks like he's out there
he's
playing backyard football.
Yeah.
like his
so
play
in
action
control.
stuff. He's just
so in control of his game. If there's like a sleeper who could rise up to the top, I think Drew Aller is probably that. We don't want to call him sleeper. There's no real sleeper at this point in time.
I think to me, Nussmeier.
Yeah, Nussmeier.
Yeah.
But there's no one who's like really off the radar, like FCS, Trey Lance type guy. Yeah. But
Anthony Calandrea.
I think people will like Aller in the NFL because he has he's 6'5", 240.
Looks the part for sure.
He's not an elite athlete, but he's twitchy in the pocket. He can move quickly in the pocket. So I've seen big improvement in his game. I think he's probably a year away, but I do think he has the tools to get there. But to me, Cam Ward, I would put just good money on him being number 1 overall. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just like when you play every single game the way he has. This is what a number 1 pick looks like. And then we just compare him to Nussmeier, to Shador, to Beck, strongest arm of the bunch.
Yeah.
Best evading pressure of the bunch. Like he just got so much to his game. And
then the mental makeup, right? I don't think there was any other quarterback in the nation that could have went to the U and turned it around like he did. Like just hearing some of his interviews, like the mentality that he plays, that you hear people talk about that dog mentality. Yep. Like he has it. I know we got to move on, but vividly remember him and Shador. I think they were at doing some training session down here in South Florida. He was like, "Man, what you drinking water for right now? They don't give us no water. Like, you comfortable out there in Colorado, man." Yeah. He was like, he just has a different mental makeup, man.
He probably also wouldn't throw his O-lineman under the bus.
Here you go. I knew you're not gonna let that down.
No, I don't think many people will let that down.
I mean, I get it. That definitely was one of his low moments for sure for this season.
All right, last question here.
Piss in the punch bowl.
Another draft question.
Piss in the punch bowl, man.
This one comes from Perrin Knopfle. Yikes.
Knopfle.
Over under 2 OTs taken in the first round this year.
So question. I do not
have more than 2 first-round grades. I think Kelvin Banks of Texas and Will Campbell of LSU will be first rounds. Now, some people see Banks, the Texas tackle, as a guard. After that, I don't think there's anyone. I liked a lot what I saw from, I'm blanking on his name, Josh Simmons, the Ohio State left tackle, but he's out for the season with a knee injury. I think he tore his patellar. So that is kind of got to put him behind the 8 ball from draft perspective. So I don't think it's under. Lucky. I definitely don't think it's under. So I'll go over just because tackle need ends up winning out in the end. Last time we saw only 2 OTs taken in the first round was 2018. And you remember who they were?
2018 offensive tackles.
I'll give you the teams: Denver and Las Vegas.
Garrett Bowles?
Yeah, Garrett Bowles.
Nope, that was the year prior.
Denver, 2018.
Oh wait, no,
offensive tackle.
Was it Denver? I don't.
18 was
Denver. And what was the other team? What was the other team?
No, it wasn't Denver. It was
Ronnie Stanley, Baltimore. No, that was before then.
It was Las Vegas and
Colton Miller.
In San Francisco, excuse me. Sorry.
Colton Miller and
because it was the year I left San Fran McGlinchey. Yeah.
It was Bowles and Ramczyk the year prior.
Mike McGlinchey, who's Matt Ryan's cousin.
I did not know that.
That's like 2 different body types.
That is wild.
Mike, I know Emory Jones got hurt, but what do you feel about him?
He was struggling early on this year. I know people are high on him. I think he's a guy that needs to come back to school. Or if he comes back to school, he has a chance of going higher, but he was not on the first round trajectory, unfortunately. So
go back to school. Doesn't have to go back to class.
Nowadays. All right. So I think I'll go over just because I think 2 definitely will, and the need ends up winning out in the end. And people could see like Jonah Savai and the Arizona tackle is still a tackle possible. So we shall see. All right. There you have it. Appreciate all the questions.
That's
and again, you leave 5-star review in that podcast with a question. We will for sure answer it on the Wednesday show. We'll be back tomorrow previewing every single game from the weekend. Until then, keep pushing.
Peace.